Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we have got some good basketball to talk about with you all. We're going to talk mostly NBA, but a little bit of March Madness too because 'tis the season. And Logan, the NBA MVP race is heating up, man. This has been a very interesting race all year long. And now with the surging Dallas Mavericks and the unbelievable play of Luka Doncic, Luka is coming on strong here. So, at this point, who would your MVP be with about 10 games left?
My MVP would be Nikola Jokic, Carson. It's simple to me. You know, I'm taking the team that's won more games, the top 2 or 3 seed. We're picking between a 1 and a 3 seed and a 4 and a 6 seed. And I'm taking the guy whose team was better with him on the floor. With Jokic on the floor, the Nuggets had an offensive rating of 124. Mavericks had an offensive rating of 121 with Luka. Nuggets have a defensive rating of 112 with Jokic on the floor, while the Mavs have a defensive rating of 116. It is close, especially with how much better the Mavericks have been post-trade deadline, and also just the fact that Luka's raw numbers don't really make any sense. It's dumb. 34, 9, and 10 on 49, 38, 78 splits. That's a stupid 2K stat line, man. At nearly 62% true shooting. I mean, it's one of the most efficient 30-point-per-game seasons ever. And Luka's the driving factor behind the Mavs, you know, this surge, them making this playoff push to get out of the play-in, which, you know, I didn't really know if it was possible or not. The big fundamental difference for me, Carson, was the ease at which this comes for Denver. And what I mean by that is, you know, Luka, I think, is so heliocentric, always needs the ball in his hands, is so pound the ball on the floor. And obviously, it leads to great team success. It leads to great offense. He's one of the greatest heliocentric basketball players ever. And he's one of the greatest just offensive engines ever. I think we can comfortably say that at this point with what Luka has done this season and over the first 5 years of his career. I mean, it is remarkable. But what I mean by that is with Jokic, it's not as pound the ball. It's a little more flowing. It's a little more team-oriented. He can do other little things, setting screens, dribble handoffs. You know, he can make easier actions. He can go on the low block for a minute and do something else, where Luka is a lot more, I'm going to pound the ball. We're going to do it from the perimeter. It's going to be a pick and roll. I'm going to start the possession at the top of the key. I just think there's a little more dynamism and variety with Jokic's game, and it's a little more seamless with offense, where Luka's a little more rigid. This isn't a knock on Luka, again, because it leads to great offense. I just think that a player like Jokic leads to greater, easier flowing offense, and it's not as one-dimensional. And then defensively, I just think Jokic is the more impactful player. When we're looking at this in terms of two-way impact, I think Jokic is the more impactful player. As we have debated many a time on this show, and we've staved off a lot of narratives here, Luka's not a great defender. He's not a good defender. He's a competent on-ball defender. Jokic, I think, you can make the argument that he's an actual good defender. With his size and how he can physically impose himself on smaller centers, the way he impacts the game on the glass, his active hands. I think Jokic is a capable defender. Now, we're going to get into some stuff later today on why I think that Jokic could be a matchup issue and a guy that they attack. I also think Luka is a guy that you can go at and attack defensively, and I think that's going to be very important to a playoff series. But I think Jokic is the better two-way player. But I don't want to act like this isn't a debate. I mean, Luka in many years, I feel like any year where there's not a Nikola Jokic on planet Earth, this is a no-brainer MVP for a guy like Luka. And honestly, I'd probably be a little mad if we voter fatigued this and gave it to Luka, but I wouldn't be completely angry if Luka Doncic got This is a historically great campaign. This is something that I've rarely seen. Like, you know, I talk about the way it comes easier with Jokic. It really is remarkable. Like, there are very few players that could do the job that Luka's doing at this high volume every single night, going at it, putting up these numbers, and taking on such a huge responsibility. I mean, this feels like tell me if I'm wrong on this, Carson. I mean, this feels like, to me, a 06 Kobe, an 07 Kobe kind of, like, you know, responsibility that he's taking on here. This kind of LeBron responsibility where it's every single possession dictating. It really is remarkable, and I hate arguing against it. I just think it's easier when it comes to Jokic, but it's one of the most impressive seasons of all time. I just think Jokic deserves it more.
I am still leaning Jokic at this point as well. I don't think that this is an open and shut conversation, and I think it is legitimately within the realm of possibility that Luka averages 43 a night and the Mavs go 8-1 down the stretch, and then he's probably the MVP. But as of now, I do prefer Jokic. This is, though, one of the great scoring and playmaking seasons that we've ever seen from Luka. Just in terms of raw volume, if we just do a classic points per game plus assists per game, he is averaging the most in a season we have seen since the merger. And he is doing that with damn good efficiency while leading a damn good team offense. We know that he just basically gets what he wants out there and controls the game completely, is an unbelievable rim finisher, unbelievable touch shot maker, clearly the best version as a three-point shooter that we've ever seen, devastating with the step backs, and then can make every pass in the book. But the reason that I lean Jokic is related to what you were saying, Logan. Ultimately, I look at who is more irreplaceable and therefore who is having the more substantial impact on team offense. And obviously, it's monstrous for both of these guys. But as amazing as Luka's raw production is, and as much as that leads us to say, oh my God, averaging 34, 9, and 10, bringing the ball up the floor at the volume that he does, that guy is carrying an unreal burden. Jokic is actually carrying the offense more to me, just in terms of how vastly different it looks when he is on the floor compared to off it. Again, Luka is amazing. He's a top 3 player alive. The guy is a phenom, and he's going to be one of the greatest players to ever play this game. But if you take him off the floor and you still have the formula of Kyrie Irving, elite shot maker, elite pick and roll ball handler, just star level perimeter creator, period, point blank, with good shooters around him, with an elite athletic rim running big, if it's Derek Lively or it's Daniel Gafford, the Mavs have produced really good offensive results with Kyrie on the floor and Luka off it. They have a 120 offensive rating in those situations. It is identical to if they're both on the floor or if it's just Luka on the floor. There's really no difference. You compare that to the Nuggets. When Jokic is on the floor and Jamal Murray is off, they have an offensive rating of 119. When they're both on together, they have an offensive rating of 123, insanely dominant. When Murray is on and Jokic is off, they have an offensive rating of 106. We are talking bottom of the league versus top of the league, and that comes down to the fact that although it's going to look different, Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, they're both on-ball elite perimeter creators who can float an offense for those stretches. You take Jokic off the floor, now you are losing your offensive hub in every way. You are losing the guy who at will gets you a great shot out of the post as a scorer or a passer. You are losing maybe the most effective screener in basketball, a guy who is up there for the most effective in terms of running handoffs. Overall, just the best passer in the game who is going to do it from so many different spots on the floor. And so now your offense is like Jamal, who is an incredible pure shot maker, but isn't going to create the best shot quality for himself always, and isn't the best playmaker alongside these guys who are good play finishers, but are made to look a whole lot better by the fact that Jokic gets them great shots and constantly has them all in rhythm and makes them all smarter and more efficient basketball players. And so that's what it comes down to. Basketball isn't about your raw volume stats. Of course, great players are going to produce with great volume, but the sheer control, the mastery of half-court offense that Nikola Jokic has is the reason that he's the best player in basketball. It's the reason that he's won MVP 2 of the last 3 years and very well could have last year. And generally, when it is really close in an MVP race, it is very fair, in my opinion, for the tiebreaker to go to the better player on the better team. The historical precedent is that it is extremely important for you to be on an elite regular season team if you want to win MVP. All the way from Michael Jordan in 1988 to Russell Westbrook in 2017, we did not see an MVP who didn't have a top 2 record in their conference. And Jokic is somebody who broke that precedent because he won as a 6 seed in 2022. And I've seen a lot of people therefore argue, well, if Jokic did it as a 6 seed, why wouldn't Luka do it this year? And I do want to explain why Jokic's 2022 season is different from what Luka's doing right now. Jokic averaged 27, 13, 8 on 66% true shooting that year. Maybe his best statistical campaign ever, although these last 2 years have come very close. But it does come down to this unparalleled team impact. He improved the Nuggets by 16 points per 100 possessions that year. His second best player was Aaron Gordon. His third best player was either Will Barton or Monte Morris, guys who by the next year were irrelevant on these really bad Wizards teams. We're not talking about Kyrie Irving as a second legit star creator. We're not even talking about the quality wings and bigs. Like, it was a lot of fringe NBA guys. And when Jokic was on the floor, the Nuggets outscored opposing teams by over 8 points per 100 possessions. When he was on the floor, they played as a better team than that of the other frontrunners, Giannis's Bucks, Embiid's Sixers, who had way more basketball talent out there. So they were legitimately elite with him, and they fell apart without him. That is one of the all-time carry jobs. That's just different than the Mavs this year with Luka because of what we've talked about. How they have been capable with Luka off the floor. How Kyrie has been able to float those offensive stretches. The Mavs have been plus 4 points per 100 possessions with Luka out there, and -2 with him off. So it's not the sort of drastic difference between, cool, we go from the best team in the league to the worst team in the league. It's we go from a good team to a slightly below average team. And as I mentioned earlier with some of those offensive on-off, they've actually been slightly better with Kyrie on and Luka off than vice versa. When Kyrie plays without Luka, they're 3-3 this year. So Dallas is just much better at surviving without Luka Doncic, but they're also not nearly as good with Luka on the floor as the Nuggets somehow were with Jokic with that measly supporting cast because of Jokic's overwhelming efficiency and his ability to make everybody around him a much smarter, much more efficient player to transform the entire play style of a team to optimize offense, where everybody around him is cutting. Everybody is doing what they can to get in position for Jokic to create these unbelievable shots for them. And what he was able to do at a major talent deficit, that was, in my opinion, just more of like an all-time great campaign where you're like, how did you take the supporting cast and make them an elite team when you were on the floor? Luka has done an incredible job in terms of volume and efficiency. He's an offensive savant, but he's not at that sort of talent deficit, and his team isn't that good. So that's why I would view it as being different from Jokic's 2022 campaign. And I do agree with the point you laid out about the defense. Obviously, both of these guys are in this conversation because of what they are bringing in terms of offensive value. But as much as Mavs fans or Luka fans in general can talk about post-up and ISO defense efficiency, and Luka is a stout guy who you are not going to easily bully in those situations, they don't mention that Luka is 10th percentile in pick and roll efficiency defensively, which is way more important in 2024 basketball. That accounts for nearly twice as many possessions as ISOs and post-ups combined. And that's what's dangerous broadly about defensive discourse in today's NBA, because there is no precise way. There's no hard data that'll tell you how good somebody is defensively. A lot of people can kind of pick and choose and manipulate and take this specific number. And I am vastly opposed to all sort of like defensive catch-all metrics. Individual defensive rating sucks. Defensive box plus minus, I don't rock with any of that. I think defense is much too complex, and too much of it doesn't show up on the stat sheet to be quantified in those ways. But the way that we value team defense in today's NBA is mostly about your impact as a team defender. Not just how do you hold up in these one-on-one situations, but how are you impacting things off ball? How sharp are your rotations? How good is your effort there? What are you able to do as a secondary rim protector? And Luka, as a slow-footed, low effort, non-vertical athlete, just isn't impacting the game in those areas. And Jokic isn't a great defender, but I do think he is a higher impact defender because of his size, his great hands, his great instincts, and his elite rebounding. And overall, when teams have gone at him in pick and roll, Jokic has held up with a 77th percentile efficiency this year. So I do believe that he is ultimately the more impactful player, even if his raw output on the stat sheet isn't as overwhelming as Luka's is, who is having an all-time season right now.
All of my homies hate all-in-one defensive metrics.
Yes, dude, do away with them. They're garbage.
You know, I think the best metric for defense is literally just eye test. I mean, I think there are good numbers that you can go off of, but all those like catch-alls, they're tough because even the percentages for like shots, like the defensive dashboard, like shots inside 6 feet or shots on the perimeter too, you know, it's all within context. It's like if a guy attacks a bad closeout and then you get scored on in the paint and your field goal percentage is affected, it's like the guy closed out poorly. You got to take all those with a grain of salt, man. Some of them are good and they'll give you context, but there's more to it. I think the final component too, what we've been talking about, is like the ease of the offense, and you mentioned it with the team success, man. We can praise Luka for doing that too, but it's also like a pitfall of his play style. And I'm not saying it's an inherently bad thing that Luka plays that way, but when Luka has the ball, it's like there's 5 guys standing around waiting for something to happen, you know?
5? You got a 6 out there?
There's 4 guys standing around. I counted Jason Kidd. My bad, bro. I forgot he retired. There's 4 guys standing around watching the ball. With Jokic, it's a lot more seamless. The team buys into the mentality. It's the crazy thing about Jokic, man. And again, I've talked about this on a myriad of shows, but the way that the team is empowered to play flowing basketball and the team is empowered to make that extra pass, it's because of how Jokic plays the game too. And again, that's not just a knock on Jokic. They're just 2 different players. And I just value Jokic's play style and that kind of unselfish ball movement. In the way that Jokic can be empowered as an off-ball player too, instead of just a rigid, I got to have the rock in my hands. These are 2 masters of their craft. These are 2 of the best in the game. 2 of the best of all time. But at the end of the day, I just value Jokic's style a little more, man. I think it leads to more inherently winning basketball on the offensive end. And I don't think he's got as much help, man. I think it is different from that case. I wanted to ask you, Carson, because I know you're very passionate about Russell Westbrook's MVP campaign. Can you elaborate on why you think this is a different MVP than like a Russell Westbrook case, or why you think do you think Luka has more of a case than a Russell Westbrook, and do you think it's a better MVP case than a Russell Westbrook MVP?
He's having a significantly better season, primarily just because he is a way more efficient offensive player. I mean, Luka is simply a much better offensive player than peak Russ was, and has just mastered the decision making, is a completely different level as a shot maker. And the thing with that Russ team was, yes, he carried an untalented offensive supporting cast to the middle of the pack in the league in terms of offensive efficiency, but ultimately that was a really good team because they were a great team defense, and Russ had very little to do with that. I mean, he was a low effort defender that year. He was a clear minus defensively. Luka is not Jokic efficient, but he is very efficient individually offensively. And I don't think that he makes team offense quite as easy as Jokic does, but he makes team offense easy in a way that Russ did not. I mean, he creates really good shot quality every possession. Jokic creates all-time shot quality every possession in a bunch of different ways that I think is just more conducive to truly elite team offense consistently. So I view this Luka season in a different tier because he is the driving factor in what actually makes this team really good. And of course, Russ was by far that OKC team's best player, but it comes down to which side of the ball are you responsible for, and these great offensive players are responsible for the offensive side, and Luka is just way better there than Russ was. I do want to shout out the other guys in this conversation, though, because Giannis is having an unbelievable season. He's having his best offensive season ever. 31, 11, and 6 on 65% true shooting is phenomenal. I do think, though, he's taken a step back defensively this year, hasn't been the most impactful as a help side rim protector, as an elite defensive rebounder compared to years past where he has just been a game breaker there. Still very good, but not at that level. And the Bucks are a very good team. Giannis has done a lot to carry them, but they're not on the level of team success that we expected from them or that Denver's put forth. So I just think he falls below Jokic in these conversations. And SGA, I know a lot of people have viewed as the primary challenger to Jokic because of the OKC team success, and I am so high on SGA. I still view him as a clear 4 out of these 4 guys, just in terms of the caliber of basketball player that he is, the dominance that he exerts on the game. He's still having an unbelievable season, 36-6 on 64% true shooting. They're an even basketball team with him off the floor. They're plus 10 per 100 possessions with him out there. He has cooled down recently over these last few weeks, though, missed a couple games with injury, and over his last 9 is just 24, 5, and 5 on 57% true shooting. So again, I just don't think he is quite the dominant force that Giannis is with his two-way impact, that Luka and Jokic are with their legitimately all-time offensive greatness. But I do think it's a really, really strong four-man race, and the MVP races in recent years have just been awesome. This is one of the best in recent memory, though. But Logan, it's not just about what these guys are doing individually, because as we mentioned, the Mavs are surging. They have won 7 straight games, and it seems like it's time to ask, are they the biggest threats to the Nuggets in the West?
For me, it would be the Lakers or the Mavericks, and they're definitely 2 and 3 for me, respectively, out west. And before we get into this, too, I want to emphasize, this isn't a knock on Oklahoma City. This isn't a knock on Minnesota. I want to applaud those teams for the amazing regular seasons that they've had. They've overachieved. They've had terrific campaigns. And this isn't a knock on, the Pelicans either. These are really good teams, but I think they all have fatal flaws. I think the Thunder are slight and inexperienced. I think Minnesota has one offensive engine. Anthony Edwards, I love him. I think he's going to be one of the best players on planet Earth one day, but it's just not his time. I think that's a few years. And then the Pelicans, I really think that whoever goes up against New Orleans, it's going to be a grimy first-round series. I think they can really grind teams. They got a lot of athletes, a lot of rebounders, but I think their perimeter shooting is going to come back to bite them a little bit. I just don't think they have enough really good floor spacers, and I think it's going to get them. So Dallas and LA, for a few reasons, and it can start with the star power, right? Luka and Kyrie, star offensive guards. One can just go toe-to-toe and manufacture offense at will. But specifically when we're looking at the matchups, I think Luka and Jokic defensively are going to be X factors in this series, especially with what I think Dallas can do versus Denver in the pick and roll. I'm involving Jokic in a lot of high pick and roll and getting him involved early with Luka, with Kyrie up top. And it's not specifically attacking Jokic, but it's just getting the defense in rotation early where I can get an early switch and then reset or kick it. We only got to see, Carson, one matchup between these two teams after the trade deadline. That was a loss for Denver, right? They're 2-1 in the season series. Denver won, but in the one matchup where they had this construction of their roster, it was a 2-point loss. It was the Kyrie lefty floater hook, man, what a gnarly shot. I went back and rewatched this game and got some of the numbers. I know we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when it happened. Dallas out-rebounds Denver 60-37 overall. They out-rebound them on the offensive glass 22-6. They beat them in points in the paint 62-38, and they beat them in second chance points 23-6. And like I said, I just think you get the defense in rotation early with that Jokic pick and roll, see what you can do there. And then I think they really match up physically with Denver. That's why I like the Lakers too. You got to be big and physical and athletic if you're going to try to beat Denver in a 7-game series. They got big guards that throw at them. Luka, Dante Exum, Tim Hardaway Jr. They got athletic wings that I like. Josh Green, P.J. Washington, Derrick Jones Jr. They've got big men that I like. Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. And, I'm not the biggest Maxi Kleba guy, but it's still a thick dude that you can throw out there, and he's a big body. So physically, I think they match up well with him. And I've really liked Daniel Gafford defensively. He is a X factor for me in Dallas changing this series. He is that caliber of a defender, that smart kind of veteran presence that not only is a real to turn around the rim, but he's smart. You know what I mean? He knows when he needs to get out and switch out to the perimeter. And Dallas has really improved post-Gafford trade when they have solidified this rotation. Not only are they more big, physical, and athletic, they've just been a better defense. Before Gafford, they had a defensive rating of 117.1. They were equivalent to the 22nd ranked defense in the NBA. Post-Gafford trade, they have a defensive rating of 111.6. That's a top 10 defense. That's legit, man. Again, I don't know if it's going to make a real difference against Denver because I do think Denver's inevitable. I think Denver is just that overwhelming of a caliber of basketball team. But I think Dallas has a fighting chance. Rebounding. 41.5 rebounds per game without Gafford before the trade. With Gafford, they're averaging 45.3 rebounds per game. That's the difference between being the number 6 rebounding team in basketball and the number 28 rebounding team in basketball. That makes a real difference for me. And so, and you've said this before too on the show, Carson, Luka could be the best player in that series. So I think it's going to take a lot of boxes being checked for Dallas. This is not an easy thing, right? Mm-hmm. Denver, to me, is the overwhelming favorite, and I will be shocked if they do not make it through the West. But there's a formula. I think Luka has to be the best player in the series, right? I think two, I think you have to crush non-Jokic minutes. You just talked about that in the MVP case, Carson, in that one game we saw between Denver and Dallas, in that late third quarter or early fourth quarter stretch when Jokic wasn't out there. Dallas crushed those fourth quarter minutes. You got to do that. Three, we need a hellacious effort. You know, the rebounding numbers and the points in the paint and the second chance points from that game, that's not just because Dallas is that overwhelmingly dominant on the glass, right? That's not going to happen every game. It was also due to a hellacious effort. Luka, Kyrie, everybody in that game was going hard, man. We need that 7 games from Dallas, man, where they have just got to beat them in the effort and hustle category to win this series. And not only do you have to get superhuman Luka, I think you have to get superhuman Kyrie. And Dallas has to shoot the lights out. That's a lot of boxes to check to just knock off, Denver. And that's why I wouldn't pick Dallas to do it, but I think it's possible. If I had to predict it, if we got Denver and Dallas in a head-to-head series, I would take Denver in 6. I think Dallas puts up a really good fight. I think they battle. I think Luka steals a couple of games, but Denver shuts the door. But I wouldn't count Dallas out, man. I think Dallas really has a fighting chance. And for me, because of all those factors, they are my second favorite out west over the likes of an LA.
I think they are for me as well. And since the Gafford trade, they had that little skid. I mean, they've had the 2 big win streaks and the one down stretch. But overall, they're 16-6, number 2 in terms of offensive rating, number 10 in defensive rating, which is probably more significant that they've been able to defend at this level. And you talk about their improvement in terms of rebounds per game. Rebound rate, I prefer because it's the percentage of available rebounds that you're grabbing, and so pace doesn't factor in because Dallas has been playing at a faster pace really this entire season, but also since trading for Gafford. But they're 13th in rebound rate versus 29th. So this is not an elite rebounding team, but this is now an above average rebounding team, whereas previously they were hanging out with the Wizards and the Thunder, like the slightest teams in the league. The Wizards just are barely even an NBA basketball team, and you're not going to do anything serious if you're getting bullied physically and bullied on the glass like that. Now, they do check a lot of boxes when you are talking about threatening a just great basketball team like Denver. They have the best player in the conference outside of Denver, Luka Doncic, who I believe is one of just a couple guys on the planet who could legitimately outplay Jokic in a series. We have seen Luka have these flamethrower runs from beyond the arc with his step backs in previous playoff series. Now he's the best that he's ever been as a step back shooter and 3-point shooter overall. And we know that physically he's going to impose himself. He's going to dominate you as a playmaker. And the Nuggets have a lot of good perimeter defenders, and they don't have anybody who you can just hunt and pinpoint over and over again, but they also don't have anybody who can really do all that much with Luka. I like Aaron Gordon in that matchup, but Luka is still probably mostly going to get what he wants. They also have the best duo in the conference outside of Denver because of how phenomenal Kyrie has been as a shot maker and as an offensive Robin this year. They are a good shooting team, which gives you that volatility, that upside that you probably are going to need. You got to get really hot. They are second in the league in threes made. That comes both from their 2 primary creators, but also a lot of their spot-up guys, 10th in three-point percentage. Now, post-deadline, they have 2 hyper-athletic rim-finishing bigs who can protect the hell out of the rim. And that has, first of all, just greased the wheels of their offense. Luka is going to make any big look good out of pick and roll. He did it with Dwight Powell. But when you give him big athletes like Derek Lively and like Daniel Gafford, well, then you just have a constant vertical spacer, and defenses are constantly compromised out of pick and roll because it's, all right, we're going to concede a Luka floater, which is a 55% shot, or he's going to torch us with a lob, and then that's just free offense for the team. And again, they have transformed the defense, and they've transformed things on the glass as well. And this is a solid, deep rotation of wings here. I think that at times we've underrated Dallas's depth. Like when I just look at the bench compared to, say, the Clippers, compared to a lot of teams out west, like it's impressive. And overall, they have just been hyper competitive as of late. Like this is a team that is taking the home stretch of the season very seriously. They are kind of flying around on that side of the ball. And even if I don't love their defensive backcourt with Kyrie and Luka out there, first of all, when those guys compete, they can be okay. They can be passable defensively. I mean, they're smart guys. They have good hands. They have good instincts. They just both have physical limitations. But then the wings and the bigs are significantly improved from what Dallas had last year for sure. So I really like that formula, man. Amazing number one, elite second shot creator, good spot up shooting cast, bigger and more athletic in the front court, improved team defense. Like, this is why I flagged Dallas as a team post deadline that was significantly improved, that could be a threat to Denver. And I don't think anybody's going to beat Denver, but if you're just talking about who has the upside to do it, I think they're checking the most boxes right now. I'm not freaking out about the Clippers like some people are. I get that they've sucked for the better part of 2 months. I just don't think it's that surprising given the composition of this team that they have just taken their foot off the gas defensively. But I still don't love what I'm seeing from them. Like, the vibes are really bad and they need to lock in defensively. So right now, just with the consistency that I know Luka is going to dominate offensively, with frankly the fact that I'm just much more confident in Dallas being healthy throughout a playoff run, with the fact that I like their depth more, that they're defending better right now, I do slightly prefer them. And then I do still think the Lakers are scary for these playoff environments because of their dynamic duo and their secondary shot creation and their defensive ceiling. But Dallas is just a different level as an offensive team. The consistency with which they're going to produce there, it's just in a different tier than what the Lakers are doing. And I think they're more capable of physically matching up with all of these big teams in the West now. So I think it's Dallas for me as well, which is a hell of a turnaround, because before the year I thought this was going to be a play-in team.
Yeah, as did I. I mean, dude, it goes to show, like, this is something that I think teams need to take notes on. You know, Carson, I think I made a flawed argument, or a bad faith argument last episode when we were talking about the Phoenix Suns and their roster construction with Bradley Beal, right? I asked, maybe you should have held on to Chris Paul. No, I mean, the move to go and get Bradley Beal was an upgrade in talent, right? Chris Paul declining, same money. It made sense. But what I think you're seeing here is that, roster construction goes way deeper than just talent. And I questioned at the time if Mark Cuban made the right decision to go out and get Kyrie Irving. We asked, could this lead to them losing both Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, pooling all these assets together and not building a competent roster around them? Well, they really have built a solid rotation around them. And I think that's the emphasis point that a lot of teams need to take back, is it's like, always at the top of your roster, it is so important to have superstars and superstar talents that give you such a high baseline to compete, right? Luka and Kyrie are always going to make you a great offense, and every single night they are going to give you a fighting chance because they are that caliber of shot makers and offensive weapons. But around them, you need guys that complement them and guys that do the little things around them and guys that just fit. And so what has Dallas gone and done around these guys? They didn't go all in on a gimmick. Like, hey, let's get a bunch of shooters out here like the Houston Rockets and go full small ball, and let's try to out-warrior the Warriors, right? No, let's fill this team with a bunch of stout, sturdy, strong, physical wings and bigs that can really pick up for these guys' deficiencies and complement them. And I think it's just been a masterstroke in roster construction and finding assets that work around these guys. Obviously, Luka and Kyrie make this thing go, but if they don't make the Gafford trade at the deadline, this is not a team that I have faith in being competitive. Mm-hmm. This is not a team that, if they don't get out and go get Derek Lively in the draft, which I wondered about at the time because I didn't fully love Derek Lively as a prospect. I thought he was really raw offensively. Turns out when you have Luka Doncic running your offense, he can just kind of, here you go, Derek. He can just throw it up there around the rim and make it work. Dallas has really crushed their roster building the past 2 off seasons in the past 2 years. And building back to where they were with Jalen Brunson and that team, and they've made it better. I think this is a much better unit than the team that went to the Western Conference Finals a few years ago, and they've really done a tremendous job at building this team around Luka and Kyrie ever since going all in with that move.
Yeah, I think that this team is probably better than the 22 team that went to the Western Conference Finals. This team is definitely not better than what they could have built if they held on to Jalen Brunson for 4 years, $48 million. Then this Dallas team could be a juggernaut right now. The resources they would have been able to allocate in adding 3-and-D players, just all sort of supporting talent, they could legitimately be pushing Denver for the favorite. So That is still disappointing. There is no wiping away the Brunson move and how bad it was, but you're right. They have done an incredible job of coming back from what should have been a death knell, should have been like the dagger for at least the next half decade. So shout out to the Mavs for that. They're playing really good basketball, and they're scary, man. Luka is just a psycho. Like, I know the Clippers do not want to see Luka. He's going to give them 40 a game in that series legitimately, and I'm excited to see whoever draws them. That's not going to be a fun first round series, and I think the Mavs are probably going to get out of the first round. All right, Logan, we talked so much about how incredible Luka is, but the man who has maybe surpassed him as the NBA's wunderkind is, of course, Victor Wembanyama, who had himself quite a weekend. Dropped 40 on the Knicks with 20 boards as he and Jalen Brunson went toe-to-toe in like one of the duels of the year, just in terms of individual performances from players on opposing teams. And then he played another damn good game against the Warriors. He just had an amazing month and continues to get better and better and better. So we're going to play a game. I'm going to give you some sort of feat or accomplishment, and you're going to tell me when you think Wemby will do said thing. And you can say never if you want. We'll start with, when will Wemby win his first Defensive Player of the Year award?
I'm going to say next season.
Yeah, I think it's next season as well. There are some people making the push for this year. I think Gobert's got it on lock with what he has just in terms of his maturity and refinement, and generally it's going to go to somebody who's leading a great team defense, which obviously Wemby is not. But with the raw talent and physical tools, he's already a top 3 defender on the planet. I think he will probably win Defensive Player of the Year next year or very soon after. Okay, when will he notch his first quadruple double?
Ooh. Next season.
Next season?
I mean, I really think that's what's so weird about Wemby, man, is everything's so accelerated and it's so strange for us to see him so advanced. But I mean, I can see it. Like the offensive IQ is already there. I can easily see him notching 10 assists. The scoring's going to come easy. The boards are going to come easy. And yeah, man, I can see pretty easily a 10 block, 10 assist game coming like next year.
I am not quite as bullish. Now, he does have 2 games with 7 blocks and 7 assists, which is just absolutely disgusting. But he's only hit that 10 assist mark once. He's only hit that 10 block mark once. I think he's going to continue to hit the assist mark more and more frequently. He's just getting more involved as a playmaker, and he's so gifted there. He averaged almost 5 assists a game this month. But that 10 block mark, even for Wemby, is pretty crazy. I'm going to say his 3rd season, but I think it's pretty inevitable that he has multiple quadruple doubles in his career and is going to set the record there. Shout out to the guys who have done it. All right. Speaking of records, this wouldn't actually be one, but it would be the most that we've seen in 30 plus years. When will Wemby block 15 shots in a single game?
Ooh. Has that ever happened?
That has happened. Elmore Smith had 17. Shout out to him. And then Shaq had 15. And Manute Bol, I believe, had 15 in a game. It's a high bar.
I mean, dude, this could age really poorly. Wemby's so freakishly long. Like, I can see it happening. Like, there's a part of me that wants to say never, but there's also a part of me that wants to say, like, 5 years, where I could see one game. You know, that's a lot of ball to be played, man.
Yeah.
I'll say 5 years. I can see it happening. But at a point, man, just like as a player, does he block enough shots where you're just like, man, I'm not driving anymore this game.
Well,
I'm stopping going to the rim, dude. We're just gonna shoot threes.
That's the thing. Absolutely, just because of deterrence. At what point do people stop trying him? Also, I think as Wemby matures, his block totals may go down a little bit. They may go up from this rookie season, but they're not going to go up forever, because I think he will develop this maturity of, okay, how do I alter shots without necessarily having to take myself out of position to attempt to block them? And Wemby doesn't have to take himself out of position like most people do, because his range is literally unparalleled, but there still is something to having that defensive discipline, maximizing your impact without necessarily maximizing your block numbers. I'm conflicted on this one. I'm going to say he doesn't do this. I'm going to say he gets really close. I would be surprised if he doesn't have 13 in a game just because he's already done 10, and he makes 7 field routine. He's only actually done it 5 times, but my goodness, it feels so easy. He'll definitely have 15 stocks in a game. I can guarantee you that. But I'm going to say he doesn't actually block 15 shots. It's just incredibly hard to do in today's day and age where minutes are lower, where players are attempting more shots from the perimeter. Okay, when will he score 50 points in a game?
Man, for this, I want to say next year, too. I can see it happening pretty soon. I'm going to say next season. I think, too, it's really remarkable that Wemby's been this good of a jump shooter this early in his career. You know, I know the numbers haven't been insane, but traditionally after 1 year in the league and you get a full off season of shooting from behind the arc, guys take a little bit of a shooting leap. I can imagine Wemby getting better as a shooter next year. Again, he already gets the easy stuff, right? Like stuff around the rim. I can see him having a torrential game from behind the arc where he just gets hot next season, bang 6 or 7 threes, and then the rest he just gets naturally. I'll say next year.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible, especially because he literally just gets better and better and better. And also, with better guard play, you think, manufacture a few more easy opportunities. I'm going to say he does it early in his 3rd year. The one thing about Wemby is he's obviously like an unbelievable scoring prospect, but he's not going to hang his hat on a lot of 50 pieces in his career. And I do think it's going to be dependent on an explosion from beyond the arc because, yes, he's going to do crazy scoring in transition, beating people down the floor. He can clean up on the offensive glass. If you involve him as a roller, he's this massive target, but he's not going to dominate a lot of games with like back to the basket scoring or even as a driver at super high volume. So he'll definitely score easily inside the arc. He already does when you create decent opportunities for him. But to hit that 50, I think he's going to make like 6 or 7 threes. Could very well happen next year. I'm going to say it happens early in his 3rd year. Okay, when will Wemby become the best player in the world, Logan?
That is a great question. 6 years, 7 years.
Ooh, okay.
I think it's when does he surpass like the value of a Nikola Jokic? I think it's going to have to coincide with like Jokic being on the downturn or Jokic retiring. I think Jokic holds that mantle until I don't know, and that's what I'm excited for, dude. I hope we get it where it overlaps, where we can get a Spurs-Nuggets battle in the playoffs, Jokic and Wemby head-to-head with, like, great supporting casts. And again, it's probably going to coincide with Wemby on the up and Jokic probably still at his apex but slowly trending downwards. Because it's all about when the Spurs can build the competent enough roster around him, right? Like, I think Wemby would be one of the best players in the playoffs already. Like, I don't know where he ranks. I've been trying to think about where he ranks right now. Like, is Wemby, would you already say a top 25 player?
Oh, definitely top 25.
Yeah. I was debating whether he was top 15 already or not.
Yeah,
and it's
that's
like,
where he's closer to.
And that's where we're going to be able to see, two freak shows collide. The other guys that he's going to be battling, Luka, SGA, Anthony Edwards, Paolo Banchero, Giannis Antetokounmpo, obviously. I'm going to give him 7 years, though, man. But I think that's where I think that's even long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's on the long scale. That's where I'm saying that I think Wemby is going to be making the definitive. He's got a championship on the horizon, a Finals MVP. He's got an MVP under his belt. This is where the ascension has already happened, and he is like planting the flag as the best player on planet Earth when he's cementing himself. So I think that's even a long time, but I'd say 7 years where he's legitimately climbing the mountain.
That's fair because oftentimes people do apply the standard of like, you can't really be the best player until you've climbed the mountain and you won the title. And it's like LeBron made a pretty damn compelling case starting in like 2008, but he didn't climb the mountain until 2012. So maybe it wasn't consensus, but I want to say when you are at least going to be able to make a strong argument is year 4. I think he is going to be by so far the best defensive player on the planet, like undeniable. Again, I don't know how Wemby doesn't win at least 5 Defensive Player of the Year awards. Like, I'm pretty darn confident he's going to break the record there. And then offensively, you put more competent players around him who can manufacture more easy opportunities for him. He'll mature a bit physically, which will make him more effective as a driver, and he's already improved there. He will improve in terms of his consistency as a shooter, especially when there's less burden on him, although his efficiency on step-backs this year is ridiculous. He shoots over 40% on step-back threes on legit volume. He's going to become even more involved as a playmaker. Like, I would guess by year 4, this guy is averaging 27 a night. And keep in mind, he's doing 21 in 29 minutes a game. But I think as his team improves, like, his volume won't just go up and up and up. But I think it'll be on great efficiency. It'll be like 65% true shooting. He'll average 13 boards a night because he already, like, per minute is one of the most effective rebounders in the game. He'll average like 5-6 assists because he's already one of the better passing bigs in the game and will be one of the best. Could even be the best in a post-Jokic world. Probably not because we see all these freak passing bigs, but he'll be up there, and then he'll be by far the best defensive player on the planet. Like, that guy's going to make a hell of a case for best player alive. And I do think because he is improving more rapidly than anybody I can remember seeing within a season, I just think his development trajectory is off the charts. And Giannis will be trending down. Jokic will probably be trending down at that point if he's still playing basketball. So it's really going to be him versus Luka. And I think once he reaches a level of refinement on both ends, that doesn't even have to be perfect. It's because as a rookie, he's already so dominant without that refinement. You're just not going to be able to deny him. The guy's a freak. He's going to be one of the greatest players that we've ever seen. Is there any other that you want to throw out there? That's the list that I came up with. Any other when will Wembys you want to play?
When do you think Wemby averages 30 points per game?
I'm not sure if he ever does.
Really?
I don't know.
You think it's is it like a Duncan kind of thing where like he could if he wanted to, but he just won't?
I don't know who you think Tim Duncan was. I think maybe you think that Tim Duncan was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I think Tim Duncan could have averaged... Dude, if Tim Duncan wanted to, I think he could average
I don't
30
think you
piece.
understand that nobody other than Allen Iverson and Tracy McGrady for a couple years and Pete Kobe Bryant averaged 30 points per game in the early mid-2000s. It simply wasn't done.
Well, I'm saying Kobe had to take the high enough volume of shots. AI had to take that... Tim had Manu, Tim had Tony, Tim had David Robinson.
But even when he didn't, he wasn't dropping 30 a night when Antonio Daniels was his second leading scorer. I mean, you would just have to so fundamentally alter his play style, and it's not like Timmy was a super efficient offensive hub. I don't know, man. Anybody can score 30 a game if they take enough shots. Cam Thomas can score 30 a game if you give him 30 shots a night. No, I think it's just not necessarily Wemby's nature or play style to be like that level of a volume scorer. I think when he has a good supporting cast around him, he is going to be like the most dominant, effortless play finisher who also is a legitimately reliable spot-up shooter, and then in his spots will break you down with this perimeter creation, but he's also going to be involved as a playmaker. He's also going to be carrying the load for you defensively. Like, I don't think Wemby's ever going to win a scoring title. That just generally is dictated by guys who are initiating from the perimeter, who do have the ball in their hands that much, the Lukas of the world, or a guy like Embiid is just kind of a freak in terms of his dominance in terms of strength, and then that level of shot making and being such a score-first player, like that being his mentality. It's just a different formula.
All right.
But I think he's going to get really close. I think he'll average 27, 28, and he can be over 25 as much as he wants. He can probably do that every year.
When do you think, you already answered about when do you think he becomes the best player. When do you think he earns his first MVP?
Ooh. I'll say the same year. I'll say year 4. Year 4, I think he'll have enough team success. Like, this is going to be dependent on the Spurs building a competent team around him, but if Wemby wins 50 games, which I think he'll be able to carry a mess supporting cast to soon enough, then I think he'd make a good case.
All right, my final one. When does he become an All-Star and All-NBA selection?
Next year. Oh, 1,000% next year. No doubt in my mind. Yeah. there you go. A little bit of theoretical fun over here.
The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. And North Carolina listeners, don't forget DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in your state.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code NERDS. The crown is yours. But you know what's not fun at all, Logan?
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I don't want to. And I wish that this was an April Fool's joke, man. But it's not. Malik Monk is hurt. Malik Monk is out 4 to 6 weeks with a sprained MCL. And so today, we are going to hold a funeral for his season. Logan, I don't know if you've prepared anything. I have prepared a poem that I will now be reading, if you don't mind, unless you have anything you'd like to say first.
I want to preface this. If you guys don't know, I mean, for a lot of people, LeBron is their sunshine, their sunshine. For Carson Breber, for the longest time, not only has this young man been his Twitter header, he has been his sunshine, his saving grace.
My only sunshine.
Dude, Carson, I think I might cry. I'm actually sad, dude. I might start crying.
Are you ready for the poem?
Yeah, I'm in tears, man. I'm in shambles.
Okay. Some light piano accompaniment. An ode to Malik Monk. It was just a month ago that you scored 39 points. So athletic, so smooth, made defenders say zoinks. That cold night in Minnesota, I swear you were invincible. They tried to guard you, but it was pointless. Just a matter of principle. What's a man to a monk who can shoot, pass, and dunk? Live dribble feeds and wraparound passes, pull up threes, quick first steps, filling seats with asses. And to think how they laughed way back in Charlotte when I looked in your eyes and said, "You'll be a star, kid." Number 0 on the court, number 1 in our hearts. I know it hurts now, but this is only the start. Thank you, Malik, for another incredible season. And may you get the bag that you are owed. And if it's not from the Kings, it'll be from somebody else, somebody more deserving, who sees the beauty of your game, who sees your value, who sees that rare blend of athleticism and shot making and the playmaking that you've developed very nicely. I wish you all the best, my friend.
God, that was beautiful, man.
Thank you. Anything you would like to add?
Dude, Carson was actually crying, bro.
Yeah, I know.
That was sad, man.
I think we all are. We're all crying for Malik. But he's going to be back next year, and he'll be better than ever. So don't sell your Malik Monk stock, because he's the man. And he's going to get buckets until the day he actually does.
Dude, the Kings are done, though. You can sell all your Kings stock immediately. Without Malik Monk, I just want to emphasize something. The Kings are done.
Yeah.
The Kings are shot.
Yeah. Well, you really can't overstate how important he was.
Yeah.
First of all, to their entire offensive formula, but specifically in that playoff environment.
Yeah.
When we saw Sabonis struggling, when the offense wasn't as much about handoffs and it became more about what can our guards do, creating shots for themselves, creating penetration. Like, Malik is really tough to stay in front of, and he's a hell of a shooter, and he's legitimately a really good passer now. And that dude's a problem.
I mean, I think he was deserved of Sixth Man of the Year this year.
Yeah, he should still win that. He should still win that.
And the thing is, too, I think you could make a legit argument that Malik's the Kings' third best player or third most valuable. And personally, I would say Malik's the fourth. I think Keegan's a little more important with what he does defensively and how he spaces it. Keegan is awesome. I know he may get lost in the shuffle because he plays in Sacramento, and I didn't like the pick at the time. Keegan Murray is a stud. He is a great wing in this league, man, with how he just impacts the game, especially defensively. I think there's so many great defenders in the league today. If I could, I might put Keegan on my all-defense team. That guy's a great defender. So he'd be third for me, but in terms of a playoff environment and what he needs to do to carry the load of the offense, Malik's invaluable, and I don't think the Kings were going to win a series with Malik.
Yeah.
I think the Kings' goose is effectively cooked without him on the court. So I really hope they keep him around, man. I hope that they pay him whatever he wants, man. Somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 30 mil. I'd throw him the bag.
30 is a little steep. 30 is a little steep. 20, yeah, I'm good
20
with.
25.
Okay, I'm more comfortable with that. But shout out to Malik. I love the man. And this really is only the start. All right, let's talk a little college basketball, Logan. But it really is only the start for Malik. I mean, you think about how old some of these college players are. Malik is only just turned 26. I mean, he's a baby. He's not even at his prime. Everybody knows that your prime starts at 27. He's not there yet. But you know who is 22, Logan, and has been dominating college basketball for what feels like the better part of a decade? Zach Edey, who has Purdue in the Final Four after 3 straight years of just gut-wrenching upsets, losing to double-digit seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And the buzz has started. Do you think Edey, who has long been viewed as just like not an NBA guy by a lot of people, like sort of maybe worth a second rounder, that has started to change, and generally he's viewed more highly than that. But do you think he's underrated as an NBA prospect?
I do think he's underrated, and it's weird. This guy's really polarizing. A lot of people either think that he's a bench warmer, a human victory cigar like Boban Marjanovic, or you think he's a role player or a starter in this league. And then there's some people that think he's not even a league player at all. Now, I don't think Edey was an NBA caliber player the past couple of years. I think he was a little too uncoordinated. He was like Bambi out there, man. He just couldn't stay on his feet. And Edey still has his problems. He's not a perfect player, but there's no way this guy doesn't have a role in the NBA to me. Either as a bench big man who you run and drop and you play for 20 minutes a night, or as a really reliable starter who's a good starter. I don't know about sub-all-star, but I think he's going to be very impactful. I think he's a guy that will give you a cool 10 and 10 a night with 2 to 3 blocks. I don't see why he couldn't do that. Like, the kid is a physical outlier. That's why I can't see him not getting minutes. He's 7'4", 300 pounds with a 7'11" wingspan. You're telling me that guy can't play in the league? And again, he's not perfect. He is a lumbering big man. He is kind of uncoordinated. I have marked down, he is not the most coordinated, he is not the most fluid athlete, and he is not a crazy vertical athlete. Zach Edey, I'll tell you what, if he makes it to the league too, he is going to be a poster child. There's going to be some nasty-ass dunks getting yammed down on his head. He is going to be getting thrown down on him a couple times.
He is 7'4".
He is 7'4", but somebody's going to put him on one, and it's going to be nasty. It's going to be like, what was that guy's? Vince Carter. What he put on that 7'2" dude in the Olympics.
Vice. Yeah, poor fellow.
Yeah, Frederick Weiss, yeah. There's going to be some nasty ones like that, but to say that this kid isn't good enough, I think you can put him in drop coverage with defenders around him, and, he's too damn big to not succeed. My player comp from him is from, I believe this is a 50s or 60s TV show, Lurch from the Addams Family. He's just big body, He's just a big dude. Basically what I'm saying, this kid's just too big, in my opinion, to not succeed. He is not a perfect player. He is not the best athlete. He is not the most fluid mover. But to me, he is such a physical freak and such a physical outlier. There's no way there's not a role for this guy in the league. Like, think of a Big Zoo, a Hartenstein, a Mitchell Robinson. He's so damn big, I think he's got to be effective. And again, sure, he's going to get picked on and pick and roll a little bit. I think if you get him out on the perimeter, you can bully him a little bit. Again, he's not the best vertical athlete. He may be big as hell. I think he's going to get yammed on a few times. But he's big body. He is huge. I think you can run drop with him, and I think he can be really effective for 20 to 28 minutes a night.
I am not too far off from you, but I may be a little bit lower on Edey. First of all, I just want to talk about how insane his production is. He's averaged 25, 12, and 2 this year on 66% true shooting. He's going to win National Player of the Year for
with
back-to-back
2 blocks
seasons.
a night, man.
With 2 blocks a night. And going back-to-back with National Player of the Year has not happened since Ralph Sampson. And, of course, the dynamics of college basketball have totally changed, and especially over the last 15 years, the best players are often leaving after one season, and then for a decade before that, some of them weren't even playing in college. They were playing high school. But that's still just insane to replicate that sort of dominance. And during the tournament, he is the first player up to this point, like going into the Final Four, to have averaged 30 and 15 since Elvin Hayes. Keep in mind, Elvin Hayes was the first overall picked in 1968. So his production is incredible. And it is annoying to me when people just like diminish guys who have physical advantages and just say, oh, he's big, that sucks. I get if it's not your favorite thing to watch, but I also think, I'm going to shout out my buddy Ethan for a second here. I'm going to shout him out, but not in such a good way. My buddy Ethan was a hell of a center in football, okay? Hell of a center. Crazy strong. I didn't really watch him that much. I'm going to presume that he had really good feet, really good technique, because otherwise I don't know how he'd be good. But because he was like 5'9", and Big E, shout out to him, would always say like, man, if I was 6'2", I could have done this, I could have done that. And I always hate when people say that about sports, because it's like, well, you're not. And the bigger you get, the taller you get, the harder it is to maintain that exact level of coordination. The harder it is to maintain that level of muscle per square inch, right? It's just useless to me to engage in stuff like that. Zach Edey, for being 7'4", is very impressively agile, very impressively coordinated. There's a reason that most 7'4" dudes, first of all, don't play in the league, even though they have this crazy physical advantage. And the ones who do tend to be lumbering and clunky, because it's really hard to be coordinated when you are the size of a baby giraffe. So I just want to give him props, because like, he is a dominant college basketball player. His play style is hilarious just compared to how things work in the league. He post-ups per game more than twice as much as 24 NBA teams. Even though he's playing in a college basketball season, which is half the length, he has posted up more than any NBA player this year in terms of total post-ups. He's had like 50 more post-ups than Jokic in half the games. And he scores with really good efficiency there. 85th percentile efficiency out of post-ups. Last game against Tennessee, including passes, he posted up 25 times. Like, this is just a post hub, the likes of which you do not see in the NBA, even among the best players. You don't see anything close to this, even from Embiid and Jokic. And Edey is basically an auto double team in college basketball. Like, off the catch, nobody can deal with him in single coverage. So you have to throw a second defender his way. And oftentimes he can get a good enough shot off on his own anyways. Like, the guy is next level massive. You mentioned it, 7'4" with a 7'11" wingspan, having like a normal compact build at that size, being strong and decently physical and decently agile. Like, that in itself is an accomplishment. He loves his hook shot. Like, I would say 85% of his post-ups, this is just off the cuff, but like my estimate, start from the left block, first of all. And then he's pretty right-hand dominant in those situations. He's probably going to go to that hook, and he shoots 45% on those looks, which is solid self-created offense. But also, when he varies things, when he spins back to the left, he tends to really catch guys out of position because people kind of try to force him left, and then he eats up fouls in those situations. And just generally, he's a foul-drawing machine. He takes over 11 free throws per game. But also, on top of this touch shot making and physicality and foul drawing, he's very solid handling doubles as a passer. Like, he gets pestered all the time, and sure, sometimes he'll turn the ball over. He's not perfect, but generally keeps that ball high, scans the floor, keeps his head on a swivel, and he's going to make the simple kickouts, and he's going to create a good look for a shooter on his team. So he's a very solid passing big, I would say. And I do believe he has such overwhelming physical advantages, and because he has good touch, and because he can make those basic reads, he will be an efficient post-up offensive player in the league. He's also been a crazy efficient pick and roll finisher, 97th percentile there. And they don't use him in that role a ton, but I mean, he's massive as a screener, and he's a huge target. He's not quick. He's not a very good vertical athlete, but He also plays with a really good pure point guard in Braden Smith, who like just generally gets him the ball in his spots and can make basically every pass out of pick and roll. So that helps him. But I mean, he's going to be at the very least a capable pick and roll big who, even if he's not like a vertical spacer in terms of I'm super athletic, catching lobs and whatnot, I mean, he's just a massive, massive target around the rim.
And that's why I just can't see a world where this guy doesn't have a role
Yeah.
in the league. Like, even if you threw him against bench units, think about some of the bench bigs that are trotted out nowadays. And I'm not picking on these guys, but think about these matchups. Daniel Tice, Xavier Tillman, Trace Jackson Davis. It's like these guys are getting back up 5 minutes. And no disrespect to any of those guys, but Zach Edey's got 8 to 9 inches on these guys. They're not stopping or slowing him down at all. It's very much, in my opinion, the Zubats quotient. It's like, in those minutes, it's the Valanciunas quotient. It's like, in those minutes, if you don't have a big body to counteract our guy, sorry, Edey's just going to eat on you. And you talk about it. That's why I didn't like Edey in these past couple of years. And I wondered, is he an NBA guy? He has developed his own individual game where he's going on the low block and putting in work. Like you said, where he's making tough shots, where he's kicking out. He's a different player than he once was. And honestly, I didn't realize how freakishly big Derek Lively was in college. I don't know why. Something about the cameras, the angles. When he got on an NBA court, I was like, God damn, that dude is big as hell. And then it's going to be the same thing with Edey. That's why I think Edey's a lottery pick. He's one of these I do. I think Edey's a lottery guy where, again, I think he's a Lively role. And Lively's different because I think he can be much more impactful as a rim protector because he's a vertical athlete. But I think you can play Edey, and maybe that's the question. Can Edey survive getting up and down the court that many times? Maybe that's the question. How can you give him the 28-minute burn a night? Can you give him is it too much on his limbs and on his knees and on his joints because he's that big body? Can you trust him with that volume of minutes? Maybe that's the question. But to me, ability-wise, I think he could be a starting caliber or immediate off the bench big immediately. And so for me, for that archetype, that role that I think he could provide immediately, I would probably take him in the lottery. I think he is a borderline lottery prospect.
I wouldn't take him in the lottery. I do think he's a very high floor player, though. The thing is, you compare him to a Zubats, to a Hartenstein. Offensively, I agree. Obviously, he is even more overwhelmingly huge. I would say those guys are a little bit more physical. I mean, Zubats is really the comparison in terms of, like, those guys can just brutalize post-up mismatches. Zoo is absurdly effective there. It's also worth pointing out, though, that Zoo, like, outside of Jokic, might have the best touch in that range in the league. It is literally ridiculous. He shoots like 65% in the paint outside the restricted area, whereas Edey is going to be closer to 50, hovering around there, which is like still solid offense, but like Zoo is freakishly dominant there. He does not miss those hooks and touch shots, and he is so strong, but Edey's bigger. And I think that in terms of passing, they have similar capabilities where you're like, they can consistently do the basic stuff. Hartenstein, I think, is a little bit better as a passer. He's got more creativity, more feel. But the basic stuff like Zoo and Edey are generally going to do a solid job with. The difference is Hartenstein is an awesome defender. Awesome defender. Zoo is a very effective NBA defender. And I think Edey is going to be a fine defender. He is massive, and you cannot overstate the impact of 7'4" with a 7'11" wingspan. So he's going to be an elite rebounder. He does have solid physicality, and in drop, I think he'll be a slight plus because he's just a disincentive. He's a deterrent. People don't want to try him. He can affect those floaters with his range, and he did average over 2 blocks a game, as you mentioned. The thing is, outside of drop, I think you run into a lot of problems with Zach Edey because he is going to struggle more in space. I mean, much more than a Hartenstein, more than a Zubats. He also doesn't have the best defensive instincts in mentality. Like, he's not the sharpest helper I don't think that he is like the most sound positionally. I don't think that he is the highest effort. So he has his size, and his size is probably enough to make him capable. But I do think there are matchups in which he is just going to get toasted in a way that these other guys don't. And then it's like, this isn't a one-to-one comparison because he is better than Boban Marjanovic, because he is a better passer, because he is still more agile. I think he'll be a better defender, like definitely a better defender. Boban was never even a good rim protector, remarkably, despite the fact that he is massive. But the point I'm trying to make is Boban literally could destroy certain lineups. You threw him out there against a small ball look, he would give you 12 points in 8 minutes. Like, Boban was 7'4", strong as hell, and had really good touch. A lot like Edey. It's not that they have these super complex post bags. They don't need to. Again, Edey's body control and agility is a little better. But Boban was this crazy effective pure mismatch attacker. But then, defensively, he was too lumbering. He was going to present you so many problems that you were probably only going to play him 12 minutes a night in deployment-specific matchups. Like, Boban's production per minute is hilarious. He averaged like 23 and 15 per 36 in his career. But overall, he was just giving up too much defensively. He was bleeding too much value. And I don't think that Edey is that. But I also don't think Edey is a plus defender like a Zubats, certainly like a Hartenstein. And I think that's where you run into the issues of, okay, like, yeah, this guy offensively, he's an efficient post scorer, but we're obviously not going to base our offense around him. He's not nearly good enough to do that. So it'll be mismatch attacking, and he's going to be good at doing the basic big man stuff. He'll be an effective offensive rebounder. He'll be a solid finisher as a roller, not going to be a floor spacer, going to be an average defender. There's not a lot of starters around the league who look like that. So I view him as probably a high-end backup. I think he's a guy you can deploy in certain matchups, and if they just can't guard him, if they can't physically match up, like, yeah, I mean, then you maybe ride him for 25 minutes. But I think there are also matchups where defensively he might struggle a bit too much against these teams that can exploit him in space, and then maybe he's a 15-minute-a-night kind of guy. So I see a path to him being a starter. I don't see a path to him being a high-end starter. I don't think he's athletic enough. I don't think he's agile enough, and he would have to have more offensive skill to offset that. But he does a lot of things really well, and this is an NBA player, and this is an NBA rotation player, and you can't just say, oh man, he's big, we don't care. Because he's historically massive. And for being historically massive, he's good at the skill elements of basketball.
That was going to be my follow-up for you on if you thought he was a starter or not. So I got one more question for you on Edey.
Okay.
Do you think you could gimmick up your defense around him to make it a great unit, in the sense that you are running exclusive drop, you are funneling guys into him in the paint? You don't think he's that kind of caliber of player?
Not if you want to build like a really good defense. I think first of all, you run into issues if you are a defense that is predicated exclusively on drop, because there are certain teams that are going to be good enough in terms of pull-up shooting and good enough from the floater range where you're just conceding good looks to them. And the whole theory is, oh, well, those aren't great looks for most players, but there are certain teams where they are. And I don't think he's a great enough drop defender. Again, I just don't think he has the instincts to be as impactful as a defensive player as maybe he could be, even given his lack of mobility. But generally, defense is predicated upon, all right, we're just going to have our big sit and drop all the time. In playoff environments, like, you just need to have multiple approaches, and you're not running any sort of switching scheme with Zach Edey. You're not running any sort of hedging scheme. Like, you just don't want him in space. But
I still think he could be like you said, in certain matchups, like, again, that's why I think Edey's that valuable of a player, is in a playoff environment. If the other team doesn't have a guy like that at all, if they don't have another big man that can negate his physical advantages, it's like, okay, I'm going to toss him out there for 20 minutes a night, and in those 20 minutes, theoretically, we should dominate the glass. We should have a guy we can just dump it to on the low block that can abuse a mismatch. Like, I don't know. I think a guy like Edey could not like completely swing a series, but he can win you a lot of minutes in a series because of that overwhelming size. I hear you too. But again, I think a player like that is valuable, where you can deploy him in certain matchups that he can abuse and not give it back on the defensive end.
Yeah, but I think teams are going to go at him basically to try to say, hey, you can't just have this big dude out here. It's like what people would do against Boban, right? And he's certainly more capable. My point is just there's not a lot of big men in the league who are average defenders.
Yeah.
Which I think is what Edey's going to be. I don't think it's, oh my God, this guy is unplayable because he's just so damn big, but he's not a plus defender, who are then unexceptional offensively. Like straight up, if you're starting, it's probably because you're a really athletic rim runner, you're a really good rim protector, you're a Gafford, you're a Lively, you're a Mitchell Robinson. There's a bunch of guys in those mold. It's just a simple yet valuable thing to have. Or you are a actual star, right? You are a Nikola Jokic, you are an Alperen Sengun, whatever.
Wemby,
yeah. And then there's like a couple guys. Maybe it's just Jonas Valanciunas, where it's like, yeah, that's a good offensive, big, average defensive player. And Valanciunas is a hell of a post scorer. He's a hell of a bully. It's just an uncommon archetype. So that's why I'm more confident saying fringe starter, high-end backup. But I agree. I mean, he's too problematic for some defenses in some specific lineups to deal with for him to not find a role in the league.
Okay, my final actual question on Edey. Do you think, is there any area where you can legitimately see him like developing, like even more than where he is already?
If it were anything, it would probably be as a passer, potentially just like getting more reps. At the same time, he's never going to get doubled at the frequency that he already has for 2 years. And I think he has improved as a passer, but I don't know that he's meaningfully going to change there. He clearly has touch, but he has been such a non-shooter through 4 years of college. I think he took 7 jump shots this year that, like, I just wouldn't bank on him developing that. I can't say there's a 0% chance, but I would say there's a slim chance. He could just get smarter defensively. But I do think you're looking at a pretty refined product here. I mean, this is a guy who's 22 and has been the focal point of his team for 2 years, like playing a very refined, sort of mature, grown man brand of college basketball. I don't see a lot of room for growth with him. Do you agree?
Not a ton. I do think he could get smarter defensively, and that's where I anticipate as the anchor guy for a defense where, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, he's just better positionally, he's more engaged, he's more locked in. I do think mentality and effort have a lot to do with it too on his ceiling, on if he's a role player, a high-end backup 5 that you deploy in certain matchups, or if he's a starter. I think that's going to be the determinant. And I like his jumper, but he just misses so many free throws. Like, I like his stroke at the line.
Oh, he's not a bad free throw shooter. What is he, 71%?
Yeah, what is he? I got it marked. And he's like 71. Yeah. His jumper
certainly gets enough practice, am I right? 11 free throws a night, my God.
His jumper doesn't look like broken or anything, but I don't. It's not like I see him becoming a legit floor spacer. I think the real determinant is going to be how effective he is as a defender at the next level.
I agree. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up, Logan, with just a fun college basketball topic. Inspired, a friend of the show, or perhaps our nemesis, I don't know where things sit, Matthew Sponauer, who tweeted back earlier in the tournament basically something along the lines of like, the best part of college basketball is getting to watch the archetypes of players who don't work in the NBA. And I thought that's a great point, man, because there are a lot of fun ways to play basketball that don't translate to the league. What is your favorite archetype of player that you'll see in March Madness and you just won't really see in the league?
I wrote down 3.
Okay.
My first one would be like the really undersized perimeter scoring guard who's like really fast, high volume pick and roll, like runs the offense, like a Marquise Noel, a Marcus Howard, a Grant Riller, like one of those smaller guards, because it's an archetype that, I mean, Isaiah Thomas and Allen Iverson are the last really small guards that I can remember that like warranted playing time because they were such great bucket getters, right? And you never see like because they're such defensive liabilities. this guy is this kind of archetype to a lesser extent because I think he's a lot better as a playmaker, and I really liked him coming out of college. Like, Sharif Cooper has been destroying the G League for 3 years. He's 6'1", he's a great decision maker, he's a great intermediate scorer, a good pull-up jump shooter, and it's like he would just get picked on defensively. And that's why he's not going to get playing time in the NBA. But he's an awesome point guard, and there are so many guys like that are great decision makers, great offensive initiators, and at the next level would lead to good offense, but they just give it back on the other end. That's one of them. My next is the dominant post scorer or the big man who is a horrible defender but a good offensive big man, just skilled. The Jahlil Okafors, the Frank Kaminsky's, the Luka Garzas, the Kelly Olynyk's, like the really skilled offensive big men who are just liabilities defensively who would never work. Those guys are a lot of fun. I loved Frank in college. I loved Jahlil. Jahlil, I thought, so many people did, man. I thought Jahlil was going to be different, dude. He was so beautiful as a post scorer, but it didn't matter. And then my final one would be a lot like the point guard, the undersized big men. They're so physically imposing in college, like the 6'8", 270, 280-pound guys, the Oscar Tshiebwe's. Again, another guy who is crushing the G League, dude. Tshiebwe is putting up wilt numbers in the G League. It is comedic, like 20 boards a night.
Logan loves the G League. I mean, he's the best rebounder since Moses Malone.
He's insane. Or one of my favorite guys, and I shout him out way too often, I love Adama Sanogo, and I think if Sanogo gets burned in the league as a 4 or a 5, I think he will have good minutes. I think he is a good minutes guy, a la a Paul Reed. That's a guy I'd compare, like, really good rebounder, skilled on the low block, just undersized. Those guys are really fun because they're so skilled and they're so effective at the college level.
Yeah.
And they just never get NBA burn. It is fun, man. It's really because the games are so different. You know, it's basketball. The sport's not different, but the game is so different in how it's played, man. Those are probably my 3.
Yeah, so you sort of hogged a lot of answers there, buddy.
Oh, my bad.
They were good choices. The small guard one, who's just electric, is fun. I think about, like, Marcus Howard. Like, Marcus Howard was, like, the nastiest player in college basketball. And, you know, he had a cup of coffee in the league, but not really. I do like that archetype. However, it's not my favorite because I find oftentimes, like, Marcus Howard was amazing, but there's a lot of guys on these teams where it's just like they carry this very heavy offensive burden and they're kind of shot chuckers and, like, they shoot 5 for 17 a lot and they're not very good playmakers, and that's not always the most fun thing to watch. But some of them are electric, and when they're on, it's really fun. My favorite, though, is, like, first, literally DJ Burns, bro. DJ Burns, NC State, is, like, my dream college basketball
You don't
player.
think, bro, let's put DJ Burns next to Jokic and let's just have the big boys eat, man. That would be such
Twin
a funny
Towers.
lineup. That would be such
Twin
a fun,
Towers.
funny. Nah, dude, they're like the. Damn.
Yeah, call them the Buffet Boys or something.
I don't know. I was going to say, dude, it's got to be something about them being thick. Like, it can't be
call them
Twin
the big,
Towers.
burly, back down to the basket boys.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah, that's alliteration. But I really do just love post play, bro. Like, back maybe a decade ago, LaMarcus Aldridge was one of my favorite players because I absolutely love post play and I absolutely love mid-range shot making. I think that is the most aesthetic place on the floor to make a shot from. And LaMarcus Aldridge was all of that, man. He was the post-up king of the league and he was the mid-range king of the league. DJ is like a legit post artist, bro. Like, his bag, the spins, the drop steps, the variety of hooks, the touch shots, like his ability to finish these difficult touch shots through physicality. It's electric. I love it. And I especially love post-up bigs who can pass. And what's ironic is I'm saying this as an archetype of people who, like, can't make it in the league. And this is, in fact, how the best player on the planet plays. He is a, like, big-time post-up player who can pass. Of course, he's also an amazing shooter. And, of course, he's huge and very long and uniquely smart and all this stuff. But for the most part, Like, especially because DJ Burns is undersized. I also was really enjoying Eddie Lampkin from Colorado. These guys are both units who can pass. DJ is like a really skilled post scorer, but they're too slow-footed. They're too short. I mean, they can't really jump. DJ can't really jump.
You don't think there's any chance for him in the league, bro?
No.
Zero.
Hasn't he been in college for 6 years? I think he's 24 years old.
Holy hell.
Yeah, confirm that. I mean, he started at Tennessee and redshirted, and then he transferred to a small school, and then he transferred again.
He'll be 24 in October.
Yeah, he's not getting drafted, buddy. He's not getting drafted.
No.
But he's awesome. He's awesome. He's electric. That's the beauty of college basketball, bro. And then you get to see teams like West Virginia. I don't know if they played this way this year post Bob Huggins, but where it's just like, all right, we're applying ball pressure the entire game. We're pressing the entire game.
Send him
VCU back under Shaka. Like, that stuff is just fun, man. I just like seeing different play styles.
Send him to the G, man. Send him to the G. He'll be a star down there. He'll be He'll be like Jumbo Kenneth Lofton, man.
No.
What?
Inaccurate. You can't tell the difference between large people, apparently. I find that offensive.
Kenneth Lofton's like 6'6", 270. DJ's like 6'9", 270.
I know, but they don't play that similarly.
I mean,
I've never seen Kenneth Lofton diamond dudes up like DJ.
I mean, I don't know, man. Kenny Lofton's kind of nice.
Kenny Lofton had 40 points in an NBA game as a rookie, bro. Which tells you how fake April basketball is.
He's still doing it in the G, man. That boy Kenny Lofton's getting buckets.
Look, everybody's doing it in the G, bro. My cousin Junebug is doing it in the G. You said Oscar Sheboy is putting up Wilt numbers.
Yeah,
who else?
Bro.
Sonogo's going to win G League MVP. I mean, for God's sakes, dude. Who does win G League MVP year after year? It's ridiculous. Hartenstein, did he win?
I think a Magic player won it last year.
I'm looking up NBA G League MVPs.
Did Frank Mason win a G League MVP?
Frank Mason? Bro, oh my God. Carlick Jones, Trevlin Queen, Paul Reed. Frank Mason, of course, Chris Boucher was like the actual G League GOAT. Who else? Lorenzo Brown, Vander Blue, G League legend. Jarnell Stokes, shout out him. Tim Frazier, Ron Howard, Andrew Goudlock. I mean, this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Marcus Fizer won way back in the day. Matt Carroll won way back in the day. Devin Brown won. How sad for Marcus Fizer. You're the 4th pick of the draft. And then
MVP,
your biggest
Marcus
accomplishment
Fizer.
is your G League MVP. Sad. I remember in NBA 2K10 on the Wii, you had to go to the G League. And I wasn't even a good G League player. I was inefficient.
Dude, I was like I created a 7'5" center, and they sent me down there, and I was just dominant. That's
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out. All right, that's going to do it for us here today, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Happy April Fools. We didn't believe anything that we said this episode. Everything we said is the opposite. I think DJ Burns sucks. And I don't think Jokic is MVP. I don't think Luka is MVP.
It's Robin Lopez.
I think Robin Lopez is MVP because the guy likes Disney. So if you guys want more Nerd Sesh content, you can find it.
Yeah, you
can. As always, I've been Carson Breber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.